Welcome to Better Together, a podcast about the Southern Baptist Convention's cooperative program presented by SBC This Week. I'm Lawrence Smith. Well, Lifeway Research does more than just collect data and release reports. They serve Southern Baptists by providing helpful trends, projections, and resources. And Scott McConnell is the man who leads that effort. Scott, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Lawrence.
I always admire numbers guys because I'm not a numbers guy. So let's start with the annual church profile. What is it, first of all, the ACP?
The annual church profile is a process to check in with every Southern Baptist congregation every year. And that check-in really consists of 5 things. The first is to ensure that that congregation is still open and functioning as a local congregation. The second is to verify that they're still cooperating and asking them if they're cooperating with the local association, the state convention, and the National Southern Baptist Convention. So those 2 things often happen very fast. They're almost implied as you reach out to the church. But the more proactive things that are asked for in that conversation are several statistics about the church and how they're doing. But also updated contact information for the church, and also contact information and names of leaders in the church. And so that's the check-in. Often it only takes 15 minutes for a church to share an update on where they're at, but it is something that we try to do each year.
Now, you touched on this, but why is it important to get that information?
The most important thing is cooperation starts with knowing each other. And we can't know each other if we can't contact each other. And so just having contact information that allows us to connect with people in similar roles, other churches, is super important for us as Southern Baptists in our cooperative work. And some of the other things that we gather, like the statistics, are really a check-in on just how we're doing at all levels. So a church is recording their history, and so they're capturing how they're doing each year, who's God has entrusted them with, new things that are happening. But at an association, at a state and a national level, we also get a snapshot of how we're doing as Baptists working together.
So how are we doing? What are some of the major trends you're seeing from the 2024 information?
We're seeing both some long-term trends and some short-term trends. The long-term trends are honestly a little bit disappointing, and that's where we see that Southern Baptists in 2006 peaked at more than 16 million members. And since then, we've been at a pretty rapid decline in total membership. And so this latest year, we're at 12.7 million members. That's also with fewer people. It's not surprising that the last few years we've had fewer congregations. And that's despite some really aggressive church planting as Southern Baptists that occurs every year. And so those are disappointing trends. Those are kind of longer term, and those are obviously things that weigh on our hearts as we want to be reaching our nation for Jesus Christ. But the shorter term trends are really encouraging. Since COVID, where churches really had to pull back on ministry and literally close in some cases for months on end, a lot of ministry stopped for a year or two, and so or at least the signals of it got a lot smaller. And so the last couple of years, we've really seen a big rebound. And so that's very encouraging to see activity coming back at really some pretty aggressive levels. And so the rebound has been very encouraging overall.
Let's drill down some. What are some of the trends you're seeing in ACP reports specific to First Ministry? What ministry trends are you seeing?
Yeah, just in churches' worship services, again, a couple years after COVID, this last year we saw a 6.2% increase in how many people are in worship on a typical Sunday. Similarly, we saw a 5.7% increase in how many people are in Sunday school or Bible study each week.
Good news.
Yes, I mean those are vital parts of discipleship and a church coming together and cooperating locally. And so to see that kind of ministry rebound is definitely encouraging.
And what about giving?
Overall, in a typical year, we see giving growing, but usually growing a little less than inflation. And so, the spending power of that at the local church level, the spending power as they give on to Southern Baptist causes, just isn't going quite as far. This last year, the numbers were actually down slightly in what they reported on the ACP, but most of that was from some non-reporting from some churches.
You touched on this earlier, but what are some of the the warning signs, maybe the red lights or the green lights or the yellow lights you're seeing from the data you're gathering from Southern Baptist churches?
Honestly, one of the most important warning signs we see is that there's less cooperation. And the ACP itself is a cooperative effort. For this process to happen, yes, Lifeway lays out a process, but state conventions are heavily involved in making that process happen at the state level, and local associations where the most relationships exist are vital in encouraging churches to participate. And today we're down to 69% of Southern Baptist churches participating by submitting at least one item. And that's with some help from some states, honestly, putting some giving numbers in for them. And so, that's a large percentage of Southern Baptists that aren't willing to take 15 minutes to cooperate in this small way. And some of those churches are then harder to connect with because their contact information isn't up to date, or we don't know their youth minister's name to invite them to an activity with other youth ministers. And so those signs of cooperation are honestly, some of the most disappointing things we see from the ACP.
But you've mentioned this a couple of times, and I want to emphasize that doing this survey takes only about 15 minutes.
Yes. Most churches have the information in a couple different spots. The financial information is typically with their treasurer, and then their attendance data is in a electronic or book form where they keep track of attendance. And those are kind of the two places they need to go, and they can quickly submit their information. Honestly, this year, nationally, there's only 8 questions for 2025. Some of the state conventions add a couple questions to that, but it's not that many questions.
So some of the disappointing things you've noted. What about encouraging signs? What encouraging signs are you seeing from the data you've collected?
The most exciting thing is the numbers we've seen on baptisms the last couple of years. This last year, again, a couple of years after the COVID rebound began, baptisms were up more than 10%, 10.5% this year. And if we were to draw a trend line before COVID, things weren't going down with baptisms just like they were with membership, not as steeply. But last year's baptisms were above that line. So we've rebounded beyond where we started before COVID. And so that's very exciting because that's where our growth is going to happen. That's our heart as Baptists, is to reach our neighbors with the gospel. And so that's the most encouraging thing. The other thing we see is just the opportunities. Yes, sometimes downward numbers are very disappointing, but God has asked us to serve in 2025. And while some of us may have been here in 1950 or 1970 or 1980, where some of the numbers may have been better in certain spots, He's called us to serve this year. And the opportunities are here for us to reach people for Jesus Christ and to cooperate together as Baptists. And the ACP is really an indicator of that.
It's fascinating. Even 5 years later, COVID seems to have been a turning point, both in a downward trend, but also starting an upward trend.
I think it surprised a lot of leaders how hard it was to restart things. And a lot of people just didn't come right back. And so there was a lot of hard work by pastors and lay leaders over the last few years. And I think they had to be more strategic about where they spent their time. And I think more of them really focused on their priorities of truly evangelism and really the core activities that help with discipleship.
And we see that, of course, with the increases in baptism. So that's great news.
It is.
Scott, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time as we again explore all the many ways Southern Baptists are indeed better together through the cooperative program.